Hi everyone, it's Jack back again with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about Block or Square. Probably going to end up calling it Square a lot in this video, but Block is of course the new name. Really interesting company. It's been an absolutely fantastic compounder over the last 5 years, up over 450%. It's one of my personal holdings for full disclosure. It's absolutely not been the same story in the last year. Since August 2021, the stock is down 64% to almost yearly lows now of around $100, and a market cap of now under 60 billion at $58 billion, which is basically not far off where it was in 2020. It's still a growing company with long-term tailwinds and a fascinating CEO and management structure with big goals. And on the surface, to me, this definitely looks oversold, so I want to analyse and have a deeper look. First up, I want to show you some balance sheet metrics and some profitability metrics, because this is arguably the biggest bear thesis for Square. Cash set of 1.48, not ideal, but not bad by any means. Doesn't have a ton of debt, and this is a reasonable position as far as I'm concerned. It's a cash flow positive business and can fund itself. While it's been taking on a decent amount of debt, it is not needless or reckless, as it is helping to fund growth, so it's not so bad for me. Debt to EBITDA is quite high. That's actually very high. It's 16.96 and very bad for Square's history. As you can see, all these metrics on the left hand side pretty poor versus historical comparisons for Square, because they're pushing to continue growth. Would be far more of a concern to me if not for the interest coverage of 7. This means 1 year of the company's EBITDA covers interest payments for 7 years. Very, very strong. Allman score of 5.66 indicates this is not a company at immediate risk of financial default. I'm not really seeing any red flags here that suggest to me that Square is in danger of financial default. Margins for Square have been cited as a key need for improvement. 1.31% operating margin and 0.94% net margin are just not good enough. This is a company that in the past has been priced like a SaaS stock and just doesn't convert to margins like it does. It's only recently profitable and recently free cash flow positive, so I'm not going to ding it too much. These are the best numbers in Square's history, but they need to get that net margin up, and because they're getting dinged badly at the minute, the stock is basically a third of what it was a year ago. And part of that is because it's just not consistently profitable and not producing lots and lots of free cash flow as it should be, converting its gross margin to net margin, because its gross margin is pretty good. I just need to see a consistent, stronger conversion from gross to net margin here. Return on equity is below average at 6%, and return on assets, again, below average at 1.32%. So looking at both these metrics, I'm not overly impressed at all. And like I said, this is the key bear thesis for this company, but this isn't the whole story. The second bear thesis is, of course, valuation. This is a growing company, so the earnings and the cash flow are just not quite there yet. So looking at the PE ratio, 324, obviously absolutely horrendous for the industry, not even that good for Square's history. 4 PE ratio of 89 seems more reasonable, but this is a company growing 30% a year, so even then, that PE is very, very high. This is what happens when a company is in the relatively early stage of profitability and is not yet fully converting its gross margin to net margin. So I don't think this is the end of the world for this stock by any means, but it's not overly impressive. Price sales is probably a better metric to look at, or enterprise value to revenue. 2.85 for price sales, 3.16 for revenue. These are some of the cheapest it's ever been. It continues to produce strong revenue numbers, regularly going over 30% every quarter. And it's extremely discounted at the minute. This is about the lowest I've ever seen it since, I don't know, maybe end of 2019, 2020, just before the stock really ran up. These are very, very low numbers, and this is about the cheapest valuation you'll be able to get Square for in a long time. Look at the most recent financial discussion of Q4. Revenue of $4 billion for Q4, up 29% year over year for a total, and over the year, 17.66 billion in total, up 86% year over year. Now, excluding Bitcoin, revenue for the quarter is up 51% year over year to 2.126 billion. So roughly half of that total revenue was Bitcoin revenue, and for the year, 7.65 billion, up 55% year over year. Now, Bitcoin is a problem and is a blessing and a curse for Square, because while Bitcoin revenue was 1.96 billion in the fourth quarter, which was up 12% year over year, Bitcoin gross profit was only 46 million. That's 2% of Bitcoin's revenue. That is not a good gross profit margin at all. Gross payment volume continues to increase at a really strong rate. Most of that is Square gross payment volume rather than cash out business, but it's now 46.3 billion. Decent growth year over year, nothing special. Gross profit now 1.18 billion, which is something like 50% CAGR over the previous 2 years. Pretty good if you ask me. The company's highlights for the most recent results. Q4 2021 is the most recent results we have. We haven't announced the most recent quarters yet. Gross profit 1.18 billion, as I mentioned, pretty strong, 47% up year over year. Again, when we include Bitcoin, that's pretty good. Cash App generated gross profit on its own of $518 million, 37% year over year. So the Square ecosystem is providing nice numbers, but a lot of that is from the Cash App, which is growing like a weed at the minute. Adjusted EBITDA of 184 million, which is down slightly from the range. Q2 was much higher, Q3 was even higher than that, so it's down slightly quarter over quarter, but compared to Q4 it's pretty much the same as Q4 2020. Cash App gross profit so impressive, bit of seasonality, but year over year up a really strong amount, 37%, and on a 2-year CAGR 90% growth, which is absolutely fantastic. The Square ecosystem 32% over the 2-year CAGR and 54% year over year growth, now 657 million. Really impressed with this. They still recorded a loss for this quarter, which is not so impressive. Quite serious loss compared to the previous year, but again, this is not a completely early stage company, but it's a company that's not trying to be consistently profitable, so I'm not going to dig in too much for this. Overall highlights for the year, 4.42 billion in gross profit, which is up 62% year over year. Massive increase on a CAGR rate, 53% CAGR since 2017. Really strong year over year growth of 62%. I just can't complain so much. When you compare this to the market cap now, 58 billion, that's something like 15 times enterprise value times gross profit, which is not ridiculously valued in my opinion for a company that's growing quite nicely year over year. 1.1, just shy over $1 billion in adjusted EBITDA, which is not incredibly impressive, but really strong growth numbers year over year, up over 100%. Cash App gross profit, 69% year over year growth, absolutely excellent. The Square ecosystem gross profit, 54% up year over year. Even though they're recording a net loss, this is all trending in the right direction. I think this is a really, really strong year for Square in the face of a lot of adversity. Just a couple of metrics from the most recent report that I think were really interesting. On the right hand side, gross profit in margins outside the US for this is such a US focused business, and they've been really struggling to gain revenue and gross profit elsewhere, but it seems like they're getting a foothold now. 9% of Square's gross profit was now in markets outside the US. If you use Cash App, it's everywhere in the US. In Europe and other places, it's not really that big of a thing. I don't use it. I'm in the UK. It's just not that known here, whereas it's ubiquitous in America. Looking at the left-hand side, gross profit by annual Cash App cohort. Looking at the bottom, return on investment from this. They're just accelerating this massively. The latest cohort of 2021, the return on investment is rapidly increasing, only a few months, a year after joining, whereas at the early cohorts, it took them so long to really recoup that investment. Overall, I think there's a lot to like with this business and a lot to dislike. I'm a shareholder, so I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible because I think this is a buy right now from my perspective, and I'm adding some to my own personal portfolio. Looking at the balance sheet metrics, they're not that impressive. Looking at the profitability, it's not that impressive, but it is cash flow positive. It is net income positive over the year, and it's trying to be slightly profitable while maintaining good growth. And I cannot fault the growth at all. Up 50% excluding Bitcoin year over year for revenue. Gross profit is going at above 50% rate. This is a company that is actually almost accelerating its growth, and it just doesn't seem to be slowing down, in my opinion. I think Cash App, while eventually in America it will reach saturation in terms of users, those users are becoming easier to come by and easier to monetize. And if they manage to crack in more international markets, which I'm sure they will, this could be an incredible growth opportunity for the company. And a lot of their products are just high in demand at the minute. The Square ecosystem has been weakened by the pandemic, and less people using these type of artisan shops that often use it, and now they're being used more and more. I think Square has a big opportunity to increase its revenue with Square back to the previous rates. I think the Cash App is an absolute titan. I think this is a company with good management, although I think Jack Dorsey is a little bit obsessed with Bitcoin, which worries me a bit. But of course, blockchain is a major growth engine in worldwide investment markets, and if they can capitalize on this, and if it actually pans out, this could be a really good investment at 3 times sales and 15 times gross profit. So I think it's an excellent investment. I'm around flat on this. This was around my buy-in a few years ago when it was far more highly valued than this, obviously in different market conditions. But I really like the company. I really like Jack Dorsey as a CEO. I think he's a visionary personality. I wouldn't say he's a genius, but he's created Square and Twitter. I think he's a very, very smart man, and I think he has good direction. He's clearly focused on Square and on Block, focused on maybe a bit too much in blockchain, but I trust him to do the right thing. I think this is a company going in the right direction and will continue to do so, and has a lot of tailwinds going for it. I think it is absolutely a buy at these prices, but it could still go down more, judging by the market environment. Who knows? There was a big bounce back where it was about 140, 150, and it came crashing back down. I think there's good opportunity for some alpha here for courageous investors. But of course, none of this is financial advice, and you should not treat it as such. If you want financial advice, you speak to a registered financial advisor. This is, of course, just my opinion, and I am a Square shareholder, so take that as you will. And please let me know what you think of Square in the comments below. If you think it's a buy, if you think it's an absolute pig of an investment. I want to hear some discourse, some discussion, and some challenging some of my opinions, hopefully, or agreeing with them maybe. Thanks, I'll see you again next time.